It's always easy. 20 years older than me. What a test.
Got the video camera going. Make sure I have the answer.
Yeah, you're look out for those cameras. 40 times zoom now.
Hello. Oh, it's me? No. Well, you left me up here by myself. Yeah, I can.
We'll get an introduction, all right?
They didn't come to listen to me. Well, maybe for a little while. See, I'll do some of the formalities. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming on this hot day. I want to always thank all of our volunteers. We did have one thing fall through the cracks today. The ice will be here in a few minutes. If anybody would like to get up during this presentation and get some soda, so there will be some ice here in a little bit. The volunteers, Colleen Jacoby helped out with Lynn Schultz this morning on registration. Larry and Joan Lapson, where are you? They volunteered today to go. Fulton County has been, he retired after 22 years in, I believe, 2004. He'll correct me on any mistakes I made, I'm sure. Taught high school for a year, went back as a civilian advisor to Afghanistan, and then they decided that he was going to run for Congress, and as a proud conservative, no-nonsense approach, he was able to get a lot of support, a lot of money, and was able to get elected, and it's primarily due to all his background. Small Business Committee, on the Armed Services Committee. He's part of the Republican Study Committee, which, as you know, a few years ago, our Congressman Tom Price was chair of the Republican Study Committee. If I had to get into all the honors that he's won, the Bronze Star and the Meritorious Service Awards and that stuff, we might be here a long time. But let me, he's proud to introduce Congressman Price. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your Sunday to come out and allow me to share some insights and perspectives with you. It is really, truly a great honor to be back in my hometown of Atlanta, Georgia. As a matter of fact, we're staying over there at the Marriott at Ashford Dunwoody in 285, and I did a couple of years down in Marist School, my 8th grade and 9th grade year. So it was nice to wake up this morning and run back down what we used to call Cardiac Hill, and just run along the track. It really brought things back home for me. Because when you look at who I am, it is truly a shock for a lot of people to be a young black conservative that was brought up in the inner city. But that is how things are changing. And look at how this room is packed full of Jewish Republicans, conservatives. This is a pretty special day. I also want to thank the general back here who actually served with my mother up at the 6th Marine Corps District headquarters, which was located down in Piedmont and Auburn Avenue and also Peachtree Street. So sir, Semper Fi, hoorah, and appreciate you being here as well. I think everyone knows what the preeminent thing is on all of our minds today. And I sit on the Armed Services Committee, so probably what I want to talk about is the security threat that we see facing Israel, but also that exact same threat faces the United States of America. And I want to read to you the statement that I sent out after hearing about the gentleman who won the elections in Egypt. A year ago, there were those of us who warned the Obama administration of a Muslim Brotherhood takeover in Egypt. We were castigated as alarmists and loose cannons. Today, our predictions have come to reality, and the ominous specter reminding us of the Iranian Revolution is evident. The Muslim Brotherhood once claimed they would not run a presidential candidate. Truly, the Arab Spring is nothing more than a radical Islamist nightmare. Now, we need to unequivocally reiterate our support to the Coptic Christians and Israel. What an incredible foreign policy faux pas by the second coming of Jimmy Carter, the Obama administration. I call upon President Obama to cut off American foreign aid to Egypt, denounce the results of this election, repudiate the Muslim Brotherhood and all radical Islamist political entities. That was the statement. Without a doubt, right now. But right now, without a doubt, the situation in which Israel and indeed the United States finds itself is a horrible situation. Israel is a shining light. It's a beacon of liberty, freedom, and democracy in a dark sea of despots, dictators, autocrats, and theocrats. But what this administration, and that's why I compare it back to the Carter administration, the naivete has allowed Israel to be put in such a precarious position that I think for the first time since the Holocaust of World War II, we could be looking at a modern day second Holocaust, a sincere threat to the existence of Israel. Let me break this down for you. In southern Lebanon now, United Nations Mandate 1701, which was supposed to be enforced by United Nations Intervention Force in Lebanon, Italians and I think some Spaniards, has failed. There are now 50 to 55,000 medium and long-range rockets and missiles that are in southern Lebanon, which could strike every single city in Israel from southern Lebanon. Hezbollah has complete run and control of Lebanon. The United Nations force up there no longer really goes out and does any type of patrolling because the Hezbollah forces are attacking them. And the UN has not given them the requisite type of rule and engagement to fight back against them. To the south, we know exactly what is going on in the Gaza Strip with Hamas, whose charter states that they will destroy the modern-day state of Israel. Islamic Jihad, Al-Quds, and Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade. Routinely, there are rockets and missiles that are fired out of the Gaza Strip into southern Israel. I've had the opportunity to go over twice and visited Sderot, and understand I'm from the South. If I said it wrong, it's because of my accent. But when you go and you see the children have bomb shelters at their playgrounds, when you talk to social workers there, and you're starting to see PTSD in elementary school age children, that should not be something that was supposed to happen. And what was the promise? What was the guarantee when Israel said that we would turn the Gaza Strip back over? That there will be peace, we'd have a willing peace partner, and look exactly what you got. And the other concern that we have to understand is Syria. Now, a lot of people are talking about the humanitarian crisis, and let's go in there and do something in Syria. But this is the question that I always pose to people when they say, you know, Crnl, Congressman West, what's the solution? What do we do? Well, on one side in Syria, you have Bashar al-Assad. You have the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, and now you have Russia, which no doubt they are supplying. Then on the other side of Syria, we have freedom fighters who we don't know who they are. We have Al-Qaeda and we have Turkey. As a matter of fact, if you have not paid attention, there was a Turkey fighter jet that was just shot down when it went into Syrian airspace. And understand, Turkey is now taking that to NATO. Turkey, being a member of NATO, can go and invoke the NATO charter, which says if one of us are attacked, then it's an attack against all of NATO, which could draw us in on the side of radical Islamists. This is the precarious situation that we find ourselves because we don't have a definitive understanding of what is happening in that part of the world. You know, a year and a half ago, everyone was celebrating and cheering this thing called the Arab Spring. The Arab Spring is truly, as the foreign minister of Iran just sent his congratulatory note to Mohammed Morsi, he said it's the new Islamic awakening. And when you think about what is happening all across the Maghreb, North Africa, what is happening in Nigeria, what is happening in East Africa with Al-Shabaab and Somalia, what is happening with Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula and Yemen, you're seeing the rise of a radical Islamic state that is trying to dethrone all of these secular governments, which if you understand their mentality, they don't believe in secular government. They believe in one empire, one entity, one caliphate that has one leader, one head, based upon the Quran. That is really what we see happening. And it's sad enough that when we have generals, such as our general here, and generals in uniform, that say, this is the situation on the ground, and this is what we need, and this is why we need it, such as General Austin, when he said we need 10 to 15,000 men and women left in Iraq as a residual force. The president disagreed with a 4-star general. I guess he has a countless amounts of military experience. And he said, you will only get 3 to 5,000. And then because of whatever reason, then it goes to 0. And if you recall when the president stood up and he made his statement about Iraq, he said one simple thing. This was the first sentence. He said, I have kept my campaign promise. We will have no troops in Iraq. Well, let me tell you what having no troops in Iraq means now. That Iran is extending its regional hegemonic dominance, and that is why you have Iranian Revolutionary Guard forces in Syria, because Mr. al-Maliki, being Shia, is not going to tell them no, so they're freely transiting through Iraq to get into Syria. This is the short-sightedness of this administration. And that is the situation that they have created for Israel at this time. You're seeing a race for who is going to be the next hegemonic dominant power in the Islamic world. Saudi Arabia is the traditional hegemon because they have Mecca and Medina. Turkey is the last Islamic caliphate, remember the Ottoman Empire. And now you have the new kid on the block, Iran, who is marching toward getting a nuclear device, which, ladies and gentlemen, if you read their theocracy, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad is not in control. It's the Ayatollahs that are in control of Khamenei. And if they get a nuclear device, that means that it will be used for the apocalyptic event that will bring back the hidden Iman, the Mahdi, and spur on the resurgence of a new Islamic empire. That is where we are. Now, the sad thing is that there are too many people in our country and in Washington, D.C., that first and foremost, they don't read. They don't understand the adversary. And even if they do read, they do understand, they don't have the courage to say it. That is why the video that you all saw, someone comes up and starts shaking the Quran at me, I'm going to probably react kind of viscerally to that. But you have to do that based upon the truth. You have to know their history better than they do. And that is why when I told that gentleman to put the microphone down and go sit down, he did. Because he knew he had walked into a U-shaped ambush. That's the type of leadership that we have to have in the United States of America. That's the type of leadership that Benjamin Netanyahu is starving for us to have. Right now, we're living a 1930s Neville Chamberlain type of moment. We're waving a piece of paper saying that there's going to be peace in our time. We continue to believe that compromise, negotiation, and appeasement is the way that you're going to have a settlement of peace in the Middle East. That's not the case. They only understand two things. That's strength and might. We continue to talk. As a matter of fact, we had talks with the Iranians, and the Iranians said, let's have some more talks in Turkey. We had talks with the Iranians in Turkey, they said, let's have some more talks in Iraq. We had talks in Iraq, and they said, let's have some more talks a little later. But guess what they're doing all this time? They're stalling, they're developing. Ambassador Bolton said, you're looking about 3 or 4 months. Those centrifuges have continued to turn. They're fortifying their underground facilities. They know the capability of our bunker buster munitions. And they're preparing to be able to for any type of action that we take. Sanctions really only work when you have a country that cares about its people. But when you have a theocracy that has a totally different goal and objective, you're not going to get them to care about the people. As a matter of fact, we saw when Ahmadinejad was elected that they were gunning down their own people in the streets. That's the level of concern that they have. So right now is without a doubt, it's that 1930s moment. If we continue to just give them and back away as we did back then, give them the Sudetenland, give them, give them a little more and believe that nothing's going to happen. We are staring at World War IV. We truly are. Because it is not just what is happening in the Middle East. It's the web that is happening with Russia, with China, with North Korea, with Venezuela. There are missile sites that are being in place in Venezuela. Missile sites which could, with medium and long range capability, strike the district that I represent, that is Southern Florida. China is building port facilities all through our hemisphere. China controls the Panama Canal, which in 2014 is going to expand, bringing in larger cruise ships. But what do you hear as far as our military capability and capacity? We've got sequestration kicking in. $500 to $600 billion or more cuts on our military, on top of the $487 billion of cuts that we've already in place. The smallest Army and Marine Corps since 1940. The smallest Navy since 1915. The smallest Air Force since we created the modern day United States Air Force. You got men and women, maybe some of your relatives, you know, 5 to 6 tours of duty in combat zones. Think about the stress on them, and think about also the stress on the families. And we're going to take them down. We're going to put 200,000 of our men and women in uniform on the streets, tell them, go find something else. At a time when 23 million Americans are underemployed, unemployed, or not even on the rolls because they're discouraged workers. Not only are we looking at a national security Armageddon, we're looking at a fiscal Armageddon. And that is why you have to be so very clear and articulate on the issues to be able to show that this president, in 3.5 years, is truly an abject failure. He's a great speech giver with a teleprompter. But he is an abject failure. And we are looking at a situation where many of our children and grandchildren, I look forward to the day when my 2 daughters can go over and visit Israel. Because being a Christian, that's your spiritual homeland. But what about those Jewish children here who want to go over for their birthright visit, want to make Aliyah? Will they be able to do that in the future if we don't get serious about the situation and the enemies that confront these 2 great beacons of freedom and liberty? Remember what the Muslim Brotherhood's charter says. Israel is the little Satan. We're the greater Satan. And the guy who started the Muslim Brotherhood, Sayyid Qutb, was educated in the United States of America at a university out in Colorado, just the same as this new president was educated in the United States of America. They come here, they study us, they understand why they want to hate us, and then they go back and breed that hate. This is a critical time. And I will close by saying this. Now is the time for you to gird yourselves and make a stand. It is truly, as Thomas Paine said in December 1776, that these are the times which try men's souls. When the summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from their duties. We can't have the shrink away. There's too much at stake. Another 4 years with President Obama will affect this country for at least 50 years. Because you are still living on the ramifications from the Carter administration, which were only 4 years. The decision that Carter made not supporting the Shah, look what we got. Hezbollah, Hamas, the reinvigoration of radical Islamism and terrorism. What would this decision? It ended up with a Muslim Brotherhood president in Egypt, the largest Arab nation in the world. What would that mean for us in the subsequent years? So with that being said, go out there and earn the admiration of men and women, because you will have made a stand come November the 6th of 2012. It's a clear-cut choice. Either you want to maintain liberty, freedom, and democracy, or you will have a socialist, egalitarian, United States that will be diminished in its influence, its ability to project strength throughout the world. And whenever we do that, someone watches and they take us all. So God bless you all, and what are your questions? Why don't you pick a question? I tell you, if I could, you got some water, bottle of water, it doesn't have to be cold. I've been in
Want to get up and
the
get a drink? Thank you, Bonnie.
Congressman West, I want to thank you for remaining unwavering
and your conservative principles and convictions. I mean, what so many of us as Republicans, we know that it was the wave of conservative ideas that ushered in the Reagan Revolution.
Yep.
And I have a message to take back to Speaker Boehner.
Uh-oh.
He so often in his group seemed to fold like a cheap suit. And at some
That's a
point,
good Southern metaphor.
well, at some point, compromise becomes cowardice, and that's primarily what I see from him and others. Because why is it that we always are the ones that compromise? If we're not willing to stand true to our conservative principles, this is the last chance for us to get it right. And it's not just about the presidency; it's electing the right Republicans.
Yep, you're right. And you know what? You bring up a great point. And how many people remember Judy Woodruff?
Yeah.
I do.
She used to be down here in Atlanta.
Yeah.
She was with PBS, and I had an interview with her. And she brought this thing, compromise, to me. And as I said, you know, too often liberals don't understand that I do read and I do prepare for it. And I said, Judy, it seems very odd to me that when President Obama was the president, Harry Reid had the Senate, and Nancy Pelosi was there, I never heard you guys in the media say the word compromise. And she immediately pivoted away from that. And I said, no, let's talk about this. Why is it that when you have just House Republicans, all of a sudden we have to compromise? I say, really, what compromise means to liberals is that you do what they say and do what they're told. But I will tell you this, that I believe, and I've seen this, I think that the speaker is now realizing that to stand up and fight, people will reward you and respect you for that. You know, because he really didn't want to do this contempt of Congress vote against Eric Holder. And there were those of us that said it's the right thing to do because people are concerned about absolutely.
Is there any ways that we can limit Muslim immigration to America?
Well, you know, I don't want to get into limiting Muslim immigration to America, but I think the critical thing that we need to do is ask the right questions. We just had an op-ed piece that was published in Investors Business Daily that talked about Sharia-compliant funding. So what we need to do is start looking at these things and asking the right questions so the American people become more evident. You know, I worked with young men, interpreters and translators in Iraq and also Afghanistan. Good young men. As a matter of fact, there was a couple of them in Afghanistan. The one kid, he had a wife and a son. He didn't want to bring his son up in Afghanistan. He really wanted to come to America. And the question that I posed to him, I said, have you ever read our Constitution? He said, I have not. I said, I will not support you to come to America until you read the Constitution and you understand what the Constitution of this country is. And if you come to America, you will be willing to uphold that Constitution. And he came back, and he not only read the Constitution, he read the Declaration, he read the Federalist Papers, he was all over. And I got him a green card so he could bring his family over. He lives up in New York. You know, the thing is that there are people that want what we have to offer. There are voices in the Islamic world that are willing to stand up. But we're not showing them our willingness to stand up with them. And so nobody over there wants to wake up with their head in their lap. And so I think that we have to be very receptive to people that come to the United States of America. When you come to the United States of America, it's about our Constitution. You know, you start talking about Sharia law, we got something. That's it. And I think that when we make that forthright statement, you know, people came to America to be part of America. And it's not just Muslims, it's all the individuals that are immigrating to America. We must get them to understand your culture is important to retain. But there's an American culture we want you to be a part of. And right now, what I see happening, what I really see happening is a balkanizing of America. You know, because people are looking how they can make political gain. So that's my bigger strategic concern. At the tactical level, we got to secure our borders because people are coming in here. You got Islamic terrorist training camps in Georgia. Did y'all know that?
Where?
Down around Macon. That's one of them. But you got Islamic terrorist training camps. And what they do, they declare freedom of religion. So that no one goes into. In New York, there's a place called Islamburg. Okay? Northern Virginia. Northern Virginia is very bad. Al-Awlaki and all of these guys, read the exploratory memorandum that was discovered in 1991 in the basement of a house in Northern Virginia by the FBI. And it outlined the Muslim Brotherhood strategic objective for the United States of America. That's what we have to be able to confront. And you can't be afraid to call it, because if not, it'll start to infiltrate. United States Army War College instructor was just fired, relieved of his duties, because he dared to say that we are in a fight against Islam. Okay? Department of Defense and the FBI are having training manuals censored because there are Muslim Brotherhood infiltrators that are going and they have influence in the Department of Defense and the Department of Justice. That's what we have to do. That's what we have to do. And look, folks, this is what is happening in our country. You know, it's kind of like, how many people saw the movie The Matrix? Okay, remember The Matrix? You know, we were out there, everyone was living in the perfect world and everything like that, but really, it was a facade. It was a computer-generated world. Sometimes when I'm walking around or whatever, I just look and say, do people really know what is going on in the United States of America? I mean, some of them need to take the little blue pill and get on board. Now, there are some people that I don't think could take it. Those are the people that will buy them.
Colonel West, thank you for your military service, first of all.
It's an honor.
Second of all, things are moving very rapidly. I want to move a little closer to home. Well, everyone here is talking about ideological purity. Our president swept the carpets underneath us by giving immunity to 800,000 immigrants who are under 30 years old. I've taken the idea of a Republican, Marco Rubio, and turned it around to hammer us in the head. I'm not really into ideological purity, I'm into winning. I think a 0.7% Alan West is better than 100% Obama, to be quite honest with you. So I don't want to talk about ideological purity, but I'm going to tell you this week you're going to be getting 2 gifts. And I want to know what you're going to do, and you and your 60 freshman brethren are going to do, when the Supreme Court either turns down all or part of the health care law, and the Supreme Court says all or portions of the Arizona, Georgia, South Carolina, Alabama, et al. Immigration laws. When the Supreme Court says that showing your picture ID is as American as apple pie when you want to vote. Yep. I want to know what you and your 60 brethren are going to do besides say hallelujah. I want to know what you're going to offer, because the people of America, you unanimously want 26-year-olds on their parents' insurance. Sure. They want the pre-existing, then everything else be worked out. So what are you doing? Well, you have legislation ready to go. Are you ready to go? Because things are going to catch up with you really quickly.
Of course. Well, let me tell you what we're not going to do. We're not going to go and create 2,700-page legislation and then ram it down the throat.
All right.
I'll tell you about the picture ID thing, and this is something I said on an interview. I find it very ironic and odd that the Democrat Party came out and said that you will not be allowed into their convention in Charlotte without a picture ID. I think that kind of puts them on their heels. But this is the key thing. There are 3 different courses of action. The Supreme Court can say that everything's hunky-dory, and they leave it in place. And even if they do that, I think that is also a good momentum builder, because the American people see that the only way that we can get rid of this thing, which is going to be an onerous economic burden and also a devastating effect on health, is to get rid of this administration. So don't think that that is going to be a bad thing in and of itself. I think that could be a momentum boost. The second thing is the individual mandate. If the individual mandate is just ruled unconstitutional, and the thing is, the individual mandate, when you study and look at the Commerce Clause, which says that the federal government can regulate commerce, which means trade, between the with other nations, with the several states, and with the tribal nations. The problem is this: if the federal government now can be allowed to enact a commerce or trade relationship with an individual citizen in order to regulate it, then what is next? And so I don't think that any way possible you can say that the individual mandate is constitutional. Now, that is the centerpiece funding mechanism for the Patient Protection for Care Act. Now, there was no severability clause. In their rush to get it passed, they did not have a severability clause, so that if one part is ruled unconstitutional, the whole thing could be ruled unconstitutional. Now, whether or not the Supreme Court will take it to that, we don't know. But this is what we plan on doing. The first thing is, if it's scenario 2 or scenario 3, which there's some aspect of unconstitutionality, we will vote to have this entire legislation, and we did this already, repealed. And then we will piece by piece start to look at free market type of solutions, catastrophic litigation, tort reform. Texas, California, Mississippi, those states instituted tort reform. Where the federal government has an effect on healthcare, we will try to institute tort reform to help lower the cost. Opening up insurance competition so that you don't have state-by-state many monopolies. We want to go and look at how the health savings accounts and flexible spending accounts, which the Affordable Care Act taxes, we want to open that up. You know, if you want to keep your child on your insurance at 26, so be it. We don't want to have any adverse effects for Medicare with the donut hole, so that'll be retained. And no one should be denied because of pre-existing conditions. So those things we will keep. But you could probably fit that in 15 to 20 pages. It's the other 2,680 pages that have to go in 159 government agencies, 16,000 new IRS agents, 20 new taxes or hikes. How many people knew this? They're the ones that nationalized college tuition loans in the Affordable Care Act. Okay? So this whole made-up argument about the Republicans want to punish college students, that's in the Affordable Care Act. And they took it from 3.4 to 6.8%. We voted already to keep it stable at 3.4% for, you know, another year. So those are the type of things that we will start peeling the onion back, you know, being in Georgia with my dahlias, we'll start peeling the onion back and making sure we do this right instead of rushing into it. You know, the speaker sent out a great memo to all of us, and we got on the BlackBerry. He said, there will be no dancing in the end zone, no spiking of the ball. You're gonna show seriousness about what we need to do to now truly replace this onerous piece of legislation. Remember, Nancy Pelosi said, we have to pass the bill in order to find the Senate. Now that we have been passed, now we know. 940 billion, that's what they said. It's been revised to 1.7 trillion. That's the cost. If the individual mandate falls out, which is the funding mechanism, then what will the cost be? So that's what we're going to do in attacking. As far as the immigration aspect, you know, the big thing, Steve King, I always talk about bringing a lawsuit against the president because this is really, truthfully, you can't rule this country by verbal edict. Or you can't change policy just by coming out and making a statement at the Rose Garden. There's a legislative process, and the executive branch must understand separation of powers. And they must understand representative government, and I don't think the president does. You know, in July of 2011 and September 2011, he gave speeches to Latino groups that said, I cannot do what he just did last Friday. I don't have the power and authority to do it. But what has changed?
Because we're a nation of laws.
So I think when it comes to the immigration thing, nobody wants to take a young kid and say, you gotta get out of this country. But there's a process in place by which you can apply for a deferment. But you can't make a blanket policy. How's that gonna affect our employment situation? How's that gonna affect, our economic situation? I was on with Geraldo Rivera on a radio interview, and I said, Geraldo, what if this person that just got a work permit goes out and works for 2 months and then they decide to quit? Are they gonna get unemployment benefits? He said, well, I don't know, I can't answer that. I said, that's my point. If the legislation had been brought up through committee, been debated, been amended, voted out of committee, then brought to the House floor on an open rule, we'd be able to answer those questions. What if the president all of a sudden in October says, these really good, young, patriotic Americans, I think they should also be able to participate in our electoral process. What keeps that from happening? What keeps that 18 or 19-year-old from saying, my legal parents, I want them to be legal too, and I want to sign with them? I mean, is there any means by which we preclude that from happening? So the devil's in those details, and we will take that appropriately after we find out what happens with this Arizona law.
What's our plan to lessen the impact of the Bush-era tax cuts that are scheduled to expire?
This is a very big thing. We call it tax-mageddon. Understand there are 6 different tax brackets out there, and every single one of those tax brackets will see an increase of about 4 to 5%, except for the 15% tax bracket. The top 2 brackets of 33% will go to 37%. The top bracket, which is at 35%, will go to 39.6%. Capital gains tax will go from 15% to 25%. Dividends taxes will go from 15% to 43.4%. The death tax, which is currently at a 35% tax bracket, will go to a 55% tax bracket. The minimum exemption level will go from $5 million down to $1 million. It will be the largest tax increase that the United States of America has ever seen. And it's not going to pay down our debt deficit. It's going for one thing, to grow a bigger government. So you have a philosophical difference in America right now. Remember what I said, constitutional republic or socialist egalitarian United States. That's the choice that the American people are going to have to make. Now, it's going to really depend upon what happens on 6 November. Because if on 7 November you wake up and you find out that the Republicans have kept control of the House, they've won the Senate, and they've won the White House, you have another side that will be discouraged. And that means in the lame duck session, we can start doing the things and instituting the right type of tax reforms. Like what we said, go from 6 tax brackets to 2, 25 and 10%, reduce the amount of exemptions down to at maximum 3, mortgage interest tax, maybe child tax credit. Take the corporate business tax rate, which is the highest in the world now, 39.6, bring it down somewhere between 22 to 25%, and reduce the exemptions. We need to have a triple. We got to hit a triple on November the 6th, so that when it comes to the lame duck session, we can push those type of reforms that have to go in place by midnight of 31 December or else. Okay? And that's the key thing. We don't want them to have these scorched earth policies.
If you just get 2 or 3.
If you get 2 or 3, it's going to be tough. And let me tell you why it's going to be tough. Okay, if we have the House and we have the Senate, you're not going to have the 2/3 majority in the House to be able to override a veto. And in the Senate, you're not going to have the 60 votes, 60 for a filibuster proof. But what you really would have done, you would have just participated in the largest Pavlovian experiment that the world has ever known. And if you all know what Pavlov's experiment was, if you reward bad behavior, you get more what?
Bad behavior.
And that's exactly what you're going to get. You're going to continue to have the czars. You're going to continue to have the growth of the administrative state. And you're going to have a guy whose arrogance will be so rampant bad. Remember, as he told then President Medvedev, tell Vladimir that I will have more flexibility. Okay? So what does that flexibility mean? Okay, you have a president who's supposed to be the commander-in-chief, the most important title that he has. He hasn't said a word about sequestration. He really doesn't care if we decimate our military.
Nope.
All he cares about is one thing: more Americans being dependent upon government. A 45% increase in food stamp recipients in the past 3.5 years. 7 million more Americans on the poverty rolls in 3.5 years. Food stamps, this farm bill that they're debating in the Senate, 80% of the farm bill is food stamps. I would challenge you, when you leave here today, if you go by a gas station or a convenience store or whatever, look and see if they accept this thing called EBT card. You know what an EBT card is?
Yep.
We don't call them food stamps anymore.
Nope, now you have a
because
credit
we
card.
don't even make people go to the office to pick them up. They get an electronic benefits transfer card, money is put into that account, and they can pretty much so use it anywhere. Food stamps in the past 10 years has increased by 267%.
Oh my God.
In 2002, food stamp funding was $20.6 billion. They're debating in the Senate right
afford it.
now, food stamps next year, $81 billion. This year, food stamps, $75.8 billion. That's what all this taxes was worth to those people. And look, y'all think I'm smart. I'm not really smart. I went to the University of Tennessee. I write all this stuff down, okay? No, I'm serious. You know, I'm serious. Any good commander has data on that. Okay? And this is what I have. You know, all of these facts and figures, everything, right here. These are the key things. And when you show it to people, they can't debate it. And if you go to our website, we put it out there so that you can pull it down. You know, we talked about the healthcare thing.
Use some of the wrong.
There. There's a breakdown of healthcare thing, 10 points about why the healthcare overall is bad, no matter what the Supreme Court says. Here you go. 31 pieces of legislation passed in the House, jobs related, economic pro-growth policies, sitting on Harry Reid's desk. That's the truth.
Are those on your website?
You can pull it down.
On your website.
Yep. This is how you win. Okay? Remember this. You know the best way to beat a liberal in an argument? Tell them the truth. The truth is like, light to a vampire. This is what you tell them. Say, show me where what you believe in has ever been successful in the world.
Right.
That's all. And they can't do it. And then they start yelling and throwing themselves on the floor. And you just don't ignore them, okay? But that's what you have to do.
Colonel West, step away from statistics and data for a second and help us understand some psychology from some of these disgusting liberal Jews in leadership in this country.
Yes.
But before you get into that, I'd like to point out.
You got all day?
I first heard you come on the scene and I didn't know it, I couldn't put a name with it. I just remember, what was it, back in 2004, 2003? I just heard of this warrior commander who had his troop put a sidearm next to a cockroach.
No, I did it.
You did it.
I did it myself. I take
I thought
responsibility.
it was a.
No, I did it.
Thank you. And that even makes me, to have that kind of leadership, I'm an ex-Air Force myself.
Thank you for your service.
Appreciate that. To have a commander like yourself, that's just.
I had a dad who served in World War II, and I have a brother who's in the Marines in Vietnam. And when I was commissioned in 1982, they told me the most important thing that you have to do as an officer is take care of your men. That's it. And it's not about you. It's not about your career. You take care of your men, you'll get promoted because they'll want to keep you because you're the right type of leader and they'll respect you for it. So that's why I made that decision. Now, let me talk to you let's talk about the Jewish community and the black community. In the Jewish community, there are people whose religion is not Judaism. Their religion is liberalism. Now, you are not going to get the entire Jewish community. Now, what we cannot have is 77 to 78% of the Jewish community vote for the president like they did in 2008. And I don't think that's going to happen. Right now, you look at the polls, it's now somewhere between 60 to 65%. If you keep it down to that level, if you get it below 60%, let me tell you something, hat tip. You got a gold star. No, seriously. You are not, don't think you're going to go out and get the entire Jewish community. It's just the same with the black community. I had one of those retro, like I said, I went down to Maris, and I went down, had a chili cheese dog and everything in the varsity. And then I went over to my old community, the old 4th Ward, Boulevard right down the hall. And it's a shell of what it used to be. You used to have vibrant black businesses, families, everything. The churches were packed. I went by my old church, and the parking lot was half full. Okay? Now, you're not going to win the entire black community to the Republican Party. But on a Sunday, the most conservative people in the United States of America are black. And so what you have to do is find those commonalities. We had last week Monday, Conservative Black Forum. It was our second one. And C-SPAN covered the entire 2 hours live, just like they did the first one. And they replayed it that night at 8 o'clock. What we talked about is urban economic revitalization. And we brought in Ronald Reagan's former economic advisor, Art Laffer. We talked about economic empowerment zones. Those are the 20% unemployment in the black community. 37% of black teenagers are unemployed. Look at the incarceration rates. Only 28% of black children have mother and father at home. They're talking about, this is genocidal. But yet, 96% voted this way. However, it's down to right now 88%. If it gets down to 80%, you've done an incredible damage to the Democratic Party. I'm not looking for all of the black community to vote, against the president. But in fact, you get it down to 80%. That's an incredible thing. And that's why, look, I'm the #1 target for the Democratic Party. And I wear this badge of honor. But the thing is this is the image that they cannot have on the other side.
Yep.
Eric Cantor is the image that they cannot have on the other side. We scared of Jesus out. And right now there's a young lady by the name of Mia Love. Okay?
Yes.
She is of Haitian descent. She's a mayor of Sarasota Springs, Utah. and she will probably be the first black female Republican member of Congress. Now, it shouldn't have taken us this long, but I tell you what, you're talking about top notch. And she has already said, she's coming down the lock shield, and she's gonna get in the Congressional Black Caucus with me, and we're gonna really take it. Yes, ma'am.
Should we get back to Iran for a minute?
Iran, yes, ma'am.
If Israel decides to attack and maybe cannot do it by themselves, do you think?
They can't do it by themselves.
Right, so do you think the United States will attack? Or
Okay, the question she's asking about with Iran and Israel being confronted with having to attack them, can Israel do it by themselves? That question is no. Okay, because you have to look at the overflight, you have to look at the aerial refueling, you have to look at the intelligence sharing, and the only people that have the modern bunker buster type of munitions is the United States of America. But there's a fifth factor that a lot of people don't talk about. That's the day after, if they were to do it. Remember all those rockets and missiles in southern Lebanon, all the rockets and missiles in Gaza? And remember, for the first time in 35 years, they have now been receiving rockets and missiles coming out of Sinai since Hosni Mubarak was deposed. And remember, now, the Muslim Brotherhood runs the Suez Canal. That cannot be debated. So Israel has to have the stars and stripes coming across the Mediterranean as a willing and forceful ally. Will this president do that? I don't think so. No. I just don't. And as a matter of fact, I will tell you that the reason why you have Muslim Brotherhood and Salafists in control, who are, the Salafists make the Muslim Brotherhood look like, you know, everyday kind of guys. Okay. When he went to Cairo, not Cairo, that's when he went to Cairo, and he gave that speech, he gave them credence to do exactly what is happening. Now, let me ask you one question. When has he been to Israel as president?
Has not.
0.
Okay, go back and look at the speech that he gave to the assembly in Turkey. Look at the speech he gave in Cairo. Okay, and that tells you the window into the soul of the person that's occupying 1600 Pennsylvania. This is a very dark hour for Israel.
Sure is.
It really is. And if you saw the statement that came from the White House today, they did congratulate Mr. Morsi for him winning the election. And Jay Carney, this is just it's unconscionable. Jay Carney said he hopes that the Muslim Brotherhood will take into account the other minorities in the country and
Right.
work together to form a government that will. They're the Muslim Brotherhood. They're the ones who said they wouldn't run a person for president, and what did they do? It's a word in Arabic called takia. Takia means to lie to non. Eric Holder's a bad guy. Well, the thing is, when you claim executive privilege, it goes against what you said previously, that you had no knowledge or no interaction with Fast and Furious. You wouldn't claim executive privilege unless there was something that you were trying to prevent getting out. So again, I mean, as the gentleman said back there, I mean, we keep getting the gifts from this president, but we have to go on offense to be able to exploit these gifts that are given. Not in a very visceral way, but just presenting what is going on. I mean, a Border Patrol agent lost his life. Hundreds of Mexicans have lost their lives. And when you really understand what Fast and Furious is about, it's about the left trying to attack Second Amendment rights. Okay, they're trying to, flood weapons from America into Mexico to say that gun stores and gun dealers providing weapons to the Mexican drug cartels, so that then that gives them the right to constrain our Second Amendment rights. This is backfiring, and this goes very deep. Eric Holder's a bad guy. Think about in February 2009, Eric Holder said, America's a nation of cowards.
Yep.
Think about the new Black Panther voter. He said in February 2009 that America's a nation of cowards. The new Black Panther voter intimidation case. We have an attorney general that is, bringing lawsuits against sovereign states left and right. When you go into the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, and Article 4, Section 4 declares the federal government's responsibility for what the founding fathers called repel invasions. That was the terminology that they used to protect your borders. In Article 1, Section 10, it talks about how the states have the right to protect their citizens as sovereign states if the federal government fails to own up to their responsibility.
Will they be able to go if they're wrong enough and he owns it?
You know, this is the issue. You know, if we pass the contempt of court, it's not going to go anywhere. It's citizens. And at the most, what can happen is, you know, once again, you get the district judge out of Washington, D.C., who answers to the Department of Justice, will be the one put in charge of conducting an investigation. And that's what we call in the military a self-licking ice cream cone.
I have one question. We're in a war in the United States and the West with fires. Now, I understand that the National Guard has tanker planes that we could be using to help put those fires out, and the Department of Defense or the President said no. What the hell's going on?
I cannot answer that. Now, you know, the President or the Department of Defense should not tell a state's National Guard that they cannot use their own resources. So, because the person in charge of the National Guard is the governor of that state. So, if the state of Arizona has these water tankers that can help with the forest fires out there, they should be able to use that. Now, I will tell you this, when I was at Fort Riley, Kansas, and they had forest fires, I mean, we did get some units that were activated to go out and help as far as firefighting. So I don't know if that is something that's been blocked, but you bring up a point that I'll ask when I get back on Tuesday.
How can we help make sure you get reelected?
Well, you know, prayer is always great. Let me tell you about our race. As you know, I represent right now Congressional District 22, which is Broward and Palm Beach County. Through the redistricting process, I'll be shifting a little further north. I will have the northern part of Palm Beach County, Martin County, and St. Lucie County, what's called the Treasure Coast. It is what is an R+1 district, which means there's a 1% advantage of registered Republicans over Democrats. And even the Democrats in that area are kind of like the old Dixiecrats. So they're not the real way out wacky, you know, lefties that you all know are down in Broward County and further down south. So I'm not concerned about the individual that it looks like the Democrat's going to have running against me. He's a 29-year-old CPA that has worked in his father's company. In 2003, somehow he got a drunken disorderly and had a fake ID at some bar down on South Beach. In 2003, it was the exact same year I was commanding a battalion in combat. So I think that's a good thing.
Better still, how do we get you to be vice president?
I got a great job. You know, I speak for the American people. You know, and this is
about president.
You know, this right here, that's your congressional voting card. That's the voice of 700 to 750,000 Americans, South Floridians. And the fact that I carry this around, I mean, do you understand how great a country this is? Yes. If you go back to the neighborhood where I was brought up and raised, and I could stand here in front of you all. I mean, Sandy Springs was like a foreign country to us. And I'm standing here before you with a voting card of the United States representative. This is a great thing. And we have to also understand that the House of Representatives is the people's house. You want people that are up there reflecting your principles and your values and to be your voice. America is a republic. And it being a republic, that means it's the rule of law, our Constitution, and it's the individual sovereignty that makes us great. So it's not about a president or a vice president. It's about you all and the power of the voice that you have. Now, you know, if God means for me to have a higher position in this country, it'll happen. Because, you know, 5 years ago, where was I? I was in the desert of Kandahar, Afghanistan, training Afghan soldiers. So my thing, I'm not worried about being obedient to man. I'm worried about being obedient to God.
Let's take maybe two more questions, and then we'll wrap it up.
You're picking because I'm not getting into this fight.
John?
What about the leaks?
Horrible. The leaks that are coming out from this administration are horrible. Think about, I'll give you a great example. How many people seen the movie Active Valve? Great movie, right? Now, I tell you, the scenario of that movie you should be very concerned about because that's not a far-fetched scenario. But this is my concern about Active Valve. We have now shown the tactics, techniques, and procedures of our Navy SEALs to the world.
Yep.
Why? I mean, because these are men that are still going out there having to hunt down bad guys. And now they kind of understand how they operate, which is how the Pakistani ISI was able to piece together all the things that this administration was saying and talking about, and they figured out who that doctor was. And now he's sitting in a prison for 33 years. He's not going to, if he sees 6 months, if he's that'll be great. But who is going to step up to support us and to help us? If we know that, remember in World War II, loose lips sink ships? If they see that this administration does not honor secrets, they do not honor any type of respectful relationship with our allies. Think about the double agent in Yemen who provided us the information about the bomb attacks that were going to come on airplanes. And now he's running for his life. So, they don't really understand national security. They don't understand operational security. And once again, this is another nail in the coffin that the American people got to make this decision. They really do. We don't. I always say that was the voice of God. But it's just the same as about 3 months ago. The Washington Post put out an article that showed the capabilities of our bunker buster munitions, the current ones and the next generation. So as we continue to stall and Iran gets more time, they know the thickness that they have to have. They know the depths that they have to go down to. Yeah, we're shooting ourselves in the foot. Absolutely. There are things that the American people don't need to know.
Yep.
Once upon a time, no one knew that SEAL Team 6 even existed. Now you go to a D.C. Reagan Airport, they got T-shirts that say U.S. Navy SEALs, Team 6. Those guys are not supposed to be known. Dr. Black.
The people that surround the president, like Salary Chair. If you want to get to see the president, you have to go through her.
Yeah, look, everyone, and that's the frustrating point even for members, of my colleagues on the Democrat side, they don't have a relationship with the president. The president has this very close circle of rigid ideologues. Valerie Jarrett is definitely one of them. Axelrod is another. And he's focused on one simple thing. And I gotta tell you, the money goes right back to George Soros.
Yep.
No doubt about it. So you're not going up against the president in this election. You're going up against a machine. And that's why, in 2010 we did something that really pissed them off. We had a better grassroots and ground game than they had.
Yeah.
That's where you all came in. That's what Chuck was talking about. The grassroots, getting out there, knocking on the doors, making the phone calls, showing yourselves. We can't fall off of that because the money that they're raising, that's what it's going to go to. It's going to go to get buses and neighborhoods to get people out and do that thing. When you turn on your computer, you go to any internet site, you got all those Obama banner ads popping up all of it. It is that sensory bombardment which is happening. Now, the good thing is that you have a president that has an incredible ego and he's a narcissist. He can't stay off television.
Yeah.
And the more he's on television, the more people say, what is he doing? Okay, what is he talking about? So his advisors, they can't pivot. Bill Clinton in 1994, when he lost those midterm elections, Bill Clinton wanted to stay president. And so he pivoted. He worked with Republicans. We have welfare reform. We reduced the size and scope of government. We went from a deficit to a surplus. Now, everyone talks about Clinton. It was the people on the legislative side that enabled him to do that. This president did not get the memo. And so he has tripled down. And he's a rigid ideologue. And look, as I said, you can call it communist, socialist, Marxist, progressive, statist, whatever. It's about nationalizing production. It's about creating and expanding a welfare state. It's about this idea of a social utopia, of fairness, fair shot, economic equality. And it really is about creating a secular state. This whole thing was not about contraception. It's really about redefining what a religious organization is in the United States of America. That's scary. That is very scary. They're starting to control the schools. The Federal Reserve is out of control. And they're talking about increasing taxation on production, which is, you know, in 1913, when Woodrow Wilson did that, prior to that, we taxed consumption. And the income tax in 1913 was only supposed to be temporary and was never supposed to go higher than 6%. This is the fourth progressive administration of the United States of America. Wilson, Roosevelt, Johnson, Obama. You think about what came after each one of those administrations.
Unfortunately, Congressman West has another event that he has to get to, so we have to end the meeting now.
When do I have to get to where?
You have to be there at 5 o'clock, and you're about 15, 20 minutes away.
Okay, so we can go 5 more minutes.
Colonel West.
Yes, ma'am.
I just wondered, what do you think about Bill Clinton saying we have 6 months to save our country?
The Clintons don't like them. Okay, they really don't. I mean, you know, once upon a time they called Bill Clinton, you know, the first black president. So he wants to keep that manifest. Really and truthfully, what you're looking at could be the destruction of the Democrat Party. Okay, and there are people that are out there that are Democrats. They're not liberal progressives, and this makes them very. Ed Rendell, the former governor of Pennsylvania, is another one. You know, there are a lot of folks that are speaking out, and so they threw Clinton under the bus, and he's also wants to set it up for his wife. She's not done yet.
Yeah.
She's not done yet.
Hall County is at the northern eastern tip of the metro Atlanta area. Could you explain to our group a little bit about Ashley Bell?
Oh, Hall County, Ashley Bell, County Commissioner up there. Ashley Bell, if you don't know, young African-American, he and his wife were delegates for Obama in 2008, and they switched their party to Republican. He was just up on our forum last week, Monday. Fantastic young man. I mean, you're talking about the future of this country. And even if you look over at Alabama, former member of Congress Arthur Davis, African-American, just changed party from Democrat to Republican. It's starting to happen. Okay, now, and like I said, you're not going to go from 96%, you know, down to 50% overnight. But if you go from 96% to 80% for the next election, it's a huge step. I mean, they will be writing about that. And there's a great book out there called Capital Men, because remember, the first blacks in the House and Senate were Republicans.
Right.
And really, the civil rights legislation in 1964 would not have passed if it were not for Senator Everett Dirksen and Republicans, because Al Gore's dad was against it, Robert Byrd was against it, you know, and so, you know, we've got to go back and reclaim that history. And this past February, I gave a special order, 1-hour speech on the House floor during Black History Month, talked about, from that period, Reconstruction on, the relationship between blacks and the Republican Party in this country to get the truth out there. So people starting to wake up, especially young blacks, because they don't see a future. They, you know, the neighborhood that I grew up, they don't want to go there. They want to have economic prosperity. They want to have economic freedom, not economic dependency. So that's what we have to continue to talk about.
Question back here. Do you really think Obama's naive, because you said so at the beginning of your talk? And number two, do you think the military in Egypt is going to give in to the brotherhood?
Well, two things. I think that there is a sense of naivete with the president, but I also believe that he knows what he's doing. There's a rigid ideology there. You elected to be president the most liberal senator that we have known, more liberal than John Kerry, you know, Ted Kennedy, whomever. So he knows what he's doing. Now, as far as the military in Egypt, you know, they're going to do what it takes to survive. Okay, if you saw that crowd that was gathered in Tahrir Square, military ain't in control right now. Okay, and let me tell you how they operate in that part of the world. Nobody wants to wake up with their head in their lap. Okay, that's the thing. The Muslim Brotherhood is incredibly powerful. They're a powerful political machine. And 70+% of Egyptians voted for them and the Salafists. So those rank and file guys in the military, they're gonna turn over. Now, the generals who may have come over here to be educated in our schools or whatever, you know, they're gonna see that. And they're gonna understand the danger that could be to their families. And that's how they do business over there. That's what I said, need to cut it off. Until they show that they're going to not be who we know that they are, we should not do it. Remember they had 19 hostages, you know, Reagan Hood, they had the Secretary of Track. American people didn't realize, you know, State Department wrote a $5 million check to the Muslim Brotherhood. And that's how those 19, you didn't hear about Sheikh. That's how those 19.
They don't consider them terrorists.
And that is called, if you understand, that's called jizya, the jizya payment. That's a reflection of your submission. Okay, you gotta read, you gotta study. You know, Robert Spencer has great books out there. You have to read and study that mindset and that mentality. They see us right now as what they call dhimmis, a submissive group. We just can't do it. Yeah, dhimmi dummies. You can't do that.
One last question over here, Blake. Colonel West, I've read about the Homeland Security procuring 500,000 rounds.
I gotta look into that. Yeah, I've heard that in the last couple of weeks several times, so now we'll look into it.
And I've also heard that Obama has put his people in such a place in Homeland Security. Because one of the things he said when he ran the first time, he wanted his own security force in the United States.
Yeah, he wanted
as
a
large
military
as
force equal, yeah. So you know, now that I've heard it several times, I don't believe it's the conspiracy thing. I will go back and look and see, ask the question of the Homeland Security Committee, has there been an increase in, rounds being procured? Because a lot of people are very nervous about, martial law and things of that nature.
Would you put it on your website when you find out
Sure,
information?
sure. And another thing, I know a lot of people have been concerned about voting machines being bought. That's not the case. There is a Spanish company that did buy a Tampa-based company in Florida, and what they actually do, they tabulate results, and they just get results out to counties a little bit quicker. But the point is this: there is such a level of fear and paranoia in our country. I don't think I've seen in my 51 years of life. That's what really makes me upset. A leader is supposed to lead and instill confidence and competence in the people that he's been chosen to lead. Right now, America is like I said, it's being balkanized, and they do that so that they can pit groups against each other. Hope and change is now what I call divide and rule. We got to be very careful about this. So again, thank you so much for having me.